The Race F1 podcast is brought to you by Merrill. It's no secret that finances can get complicated. Like me, I'm sure many of you listening will have financial goals. Perhaps it's even saving up for that trip to a Grand Prix far afield. Whatever your goals are, from starting a business to saving for kids' college to getting more stamps in your passport, you want a straightforward path there. But life tends to have other plans, and things get in your way. Merrill understands that. That's why with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalised plan that can help keep your money in sync with your life. So with the bull at your back, no matter what life brings, you get a clear path forward. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting.
Oh.
Well, not the ones you're hoping for.
Ah, okay. Thank you?
You want squeals of delight.
Yes!
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
To get those, make everyone on your list feel heard with gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, vintage pieces, and home decor. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
The Athletic.
Just drama in Harama. Formula E back in action ahead of the new season starting. And joining me, your host, Andrew Vanderberg, to dissect all things from cars going round in circles for a little while without any meaningful times being recorded. Our intrepid Formula E correspondent, Sam Smith. And how would you prefer to be described, Alexa? A paddock insider? Pit lane reporter? What's your nominal title?
I like all of the above. They make me sound fancy, but let's go. I think the official one's digital reporter, which, again, kind of fancy, kind of mysterious. I like it.
Formula E digital reporter, Alexa Rendell, making your pod debut. So welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me.
Had you been to Harama before? And if so, what did you make of it?
I'll be completely frank with you. Until basically it got announced, I had never heard of Harama, but ultimately I came away from it really impressed. I'm sure we'll get onto it in further detail, but what Formula E managed to put on in such a short space of time was unbelievably impressive. And then subsequently, it was actually so close to Madrid that the entire thing was just really smooth, really easy. And it was actually really good fun to watch as well. That with the undulation, you could see so much of the track from the media centre and around sort of the paddock. Yeah, really enjoyed the experience, honestly.
For those of us of a certain age, Harama's always got a special place because obviously it's where Villeneuve's 81 win and all of that took place. I remember the very first time I went there back in the World Series by, I reckon it'd be Nissan days. Sam, you know where the media car park is, that downhill and an uphill left-hander, just standing and watching cars there for about half an hour. I think it's a great place.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think I was one of only a few that have been there before, actually. I went for the European Truck Racing Championship, and one of my primary memories is of getting an invoice for about 200 metres of Armco that got destroyed one weekend. So it is the kind of old school place that, you know, you got to go to every now and again to remind you of where things have come from. I mean, it's... It isn't for the modern age, let's put it that way. There's a reason why it hasn't held big championships and big races for many years, but it is a very well run facility. And just to emphasize what Alexa said, I think the fact Formula E getting that together within pretty much 72 hours or so was Herculean in its effort. And actually, we mustn't forget that we came from Valencia, and I think it goes without saying, wishing all our friends and all the people who put the usual test together, and all the people who are in and around Valencia to get back on their feet as soon as possible, and get back to some kind of normality after that terrible tragedy that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we've seen it on MotoGP over the weekend, and Valencia placed almost all of us that work in motorsport have been many times, and we wish all of the people there the very best in recovering from those terrible events. Sam, when faced with, I mean, obviously the track was going to be completely unusable, and even if it was, with all the clear-up work going on in the rest of the city, it clearly couldn't go to Valencia. How did Jarama end up being the venue that was chosen for the test?
It was one of three that were considered, but the one that was only really truly viable. Obviously, it happened extremely quickly. Lots of emergency meetings going on in the just the days after the flooding, and the extent of the damage became known. The perimeter roads around Valencia were damaged, and at one time there was a lot of concern about whether Sao Paulo could happen, because Valencia is the hub. It's the operations and logistics hub of Formula E. So there was a lot of infrastructure within the circuit that they weren't sure could get out. But with the contacts that a lot of the sort of the Spanish cell of organisers, people like Nacho Calcedo and Agus Delicado and lots of others, including people we know a lot, V2B, like Barry Mortimer, who is one of the logistics managers there, under the management of Alberto Longo and Nacho as well. They managed to get the requisite transport to shift all that equipment from Valencia to Madrid, which isn't too far away. It's a couple of 100 miles. But they were running out of time, and the Friday before the test began was a bank holiday in Spain, so it just added extra pressures to try and get this on, and they did it. And I must say, for Formula E to do that was one thing. To do it in such sensitive circumstances, I think they did it extremely well. And they've got a fund where they're giving money. I can't remember how much was it. Can you remember how much it was, Alexa? They're giving a good chunk of money to the fund, the relief fund in Valencia. I think it was 100,000 euros. Maybe it was more.
Yeah, I want to say like 50 or 100. It was a big number.
Okay. Yeah, it was, really nice gesture. Lots of strong ties to Valencia. We've been going there since 2017 with the Formula E test, and obviously it raced there a couple of times as well, didn't it? So, yeah, I think they did a really good job. Harama was the sensible option because it's a permanent facility. There were Calafat, Monte Blanco were sort of banded around, but actually the fact that you've got permanent pits there and it's a Grade 2 listed FIA track meant that there was, that it actually just accelerated getting everything in place and making sure that the test could happen. And actually, it felt like I won't say a normal test, but it didn't have all the trimmings, and nor should it. It was just purely getting the thing on, and to do that in 3 days pretty much was fairly extraordinary. And I didn't hear anything other than good things about the circuit, and particularly about the Royal Automobile Club of España, which were very helpful to Formula E operations, and it worked nicely. I think it was, even there's a couple of drivers saying, we could race here, and I'm thinking, no,
I reckon they could.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the curbs are pretty agricultural. That's
the point.
It would be so fun. It would be so fun.
There's not much runoff. The big problem is it's a lengthy circuit, and there's no configuration, so you've got to use the whole track. And
you've got to use the whole track.
And the energy targets were enormous, so it would be even crazier than Portland. But we kind of like crazy, don't we, in this business? So.
Make it happen. Okay. Obviously, Alexa, it's testing, so the biggest pinch of salt being taken. But there were certain things that we learnt, weren't there, from what happened over the course of the running?
Yeah, certainly. As always, there's teams that look strong, teams that look like they've got some work to do. I think all the Porsche powertrains certainly looked in a pretty healthy place, consistently setting good times. The drivers were happy. Even worth mentioning, Kiro Race Co. Is that how you pronounce it, I think? It was Dan Ticktum and David Beckmann testing for them, still unconfirmed for the rest of the season, but they did a really good job consistently putting quick times up there with that new, well, I want to say new Porsche powertrain, but ultimately the old Porsche powertrain. I think for me, they were certainly the standout trio of the week.
Now, when we were talking beforehand, when the teams had been testing privately, everyone was waxing lyrical about how fast all these cars were, especially in all-wheel drive. Did they look like that trackside?
Mate, they looked so good. I was actually,
good.
Personally, I was really impressed that I sort of came into it not expecting to see the difference. But there were certain points around the track where I saw them and went, blimey, that's freaking quick, man. Like it really was, at certain spots, certainly a notable difference. And I think you'll hear the drivers talking about it. A lot of them do seem very positive about the direction in which the car's going.
Sam, obviously we were denied the ability to sort of test it against a known benchmark that we would have had at Valencia, but what's the sense of lap time difference?
I think it's somewhere in the region of between 2 and 3 seconds. I think ultimately by the end of the season it'll be around 3. I would think that they're quick enough now. You know, you can actually visually see the difference. And you remember Jake Hughes on the last podcast saying he was getting his head smashed against the headrest when he was accelerating off the.
Honestly, they were sounding like they were thrust SSC at the speed that the drivers were saying they were going. I was like,
yeah, maybe get Richard Noble in a car for a couple of E-Prix. I don't know. I mean, it was you could see it and you could feel it. I mean, from the pits, as Alexa said, if you went up the tower, you could see a good chunk of the circuit before they disappeared over that left-hander which goes underneath the bridge, the sort of arch bridge. And I shouldn't say the tyre manufacturer, should I? Because it's a Hankook championship, but you know what I mean.
We know what you mean.
There's subtle, Sam, subtle.
And actually, that there's a really famous, is it a GIF? They call it a GIF, don't they? Am I right, Alexa? You know about these things.
Yes, it is a GIF.
Well, originally they were GIFs, but no one says GIF because it just sounds wrong. It sounds like some sort of cleaning product.
There's a famous GIF of Villeneuve in the 126K, is it? The 81 car.
Bear with us, Alexa. We'll get back to Formula 1.
Yeah. And he's doing this unbelievable oversteery sort of power slide and on the curbs. I'll send it to you later. And I sent it to a few of the drivers.
I know exactly the pit. I can see it in my head now.
And quite a few of the drivers came back and I said, I'll be disappointed if you guys don't achieve this by the end of today. And I think a few of them did. I think they quite enjoyed the undulation and the sort of hang it out there part of the track. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say where things are. I think Porsche is certainly at the forefront. You know, they seem to have made a good step with their new car.
Isn't that the case in every pre-season test?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and the thing is, there is a big discrepancy between making a step technically and then applying it in the race. And the good thing for us, the people watching it and the viewers out there, is that I think this year it'll be exacerbated much more in terms of the field closing up, because no one's truly got on top of these tyres yet. So there's a new construction of tyres, a new compound of tyres by Hankook, and despite all the cool stuff like the 4-wheel drive and, you know, the new bodywork and the attack charge or pit boost as we now call it, it's actually the 4 black round things that are really challenging the teams here. And these are much racier tyres, going to get degradation on these tyres. Harama was a very coarse, very unique macro tarmac.
When was the last time that was resurfaced?
Probably the year before, 81, born. Yeah, probably early 80s. I reckon probably ballasted it, didn't he, with the money he got from that FISA FOCA war that he governed there in 80. But it's just... It's hard to gauge where things were. Kiro were very impressive in the sense that they hadn't done any running since London. I think they maybe did like a couple of shakedowns. They did a half-day shakedown at Weissach the week before. They got to Harama. They were still dressing the car. You know, they were still liverying the car up pretty much as they got there. And they didn't have any issues. They ran the car. Yes, they had Porsche liaison engineers there with them. And it's clearly well, depending on who you speak to in the paddock, it's either a Porsche puppet team or a Porsche patsy team. Take your pick of those, and you're going to be able to read it.
But it's gone down well then.
You're going to be able to read a really good feature on this by the time this goes out, which digs into that. It's going to be fascinating to see where things are there. Dan Ticktum and David Beckmann are going to be in that car. They're going to be racing that car. It's going to be announced. It'll be out there by the time this goes out. And I think they're quick, and I think the old homologation Porsche is still quick enough to certainly get podiums, possibly win races as well. Whether or not Kiro got the team to do it, and they will argue they have, but we're yet to see that at the sharp end. And B, if they're allowed to do it, that's going to be the key things with those two questions. And I think it could be really fascinating how they're positioned and how Porsche try and mould that team, because they tried it with Andretti and it didn't work, and they got big kickback from it. And now they've got 6 cars on the grid, and one of them could be given over to that particular way of racing.
So Alexa, obviously your job involves speaking to a lot of the drivers, and as we know, they all like a little bit of a whinge about things. What was their opinion of the new rubber, and in particular the amount of degradation that they were getting?
There was a lot of tyre chatter. Some of the teams seem to think they're getting on top of it okay. They're all very aware this is going to be a challenge this year, right? And I think throughout this season, there's going to be a lot more tyre chat than we've had. I don't want to say ever in Formula E. I can't quite remember the early days, but you can correct me on that. But certainly... It
was never really a thing. Honestly, people never really spoke about them. Yeah.
And now suddenly, this is going to be almost a deciding factor going into this year. Now, some teams are really like, this is kind of annoying. We need extra sets of tyres going through a race weekend. Whereas others are like, actually, we really think, as Sam said, this will kind of close the field up and actually create better racing. And it's like energy management. You've just got to get on top of it, and you've got to work out how you do this the best you possibly can. And for those teams who can get on top of it quickly, certainly towards the start of the season, there are seriously rewards to be reaped. If you work this out and work it out soon, teams that aren't necessarily quite as capable of wins as perhaps the likes of Porsche, if a Lola can get on top of their tyres sooner than everyone else, it suddenly gives them the opportunity to be scoring points and scoring them points earlier in the year than perhaps before.
I tell you two other things which no one's talking about with the tyres, and these are really two interesting topics. The first one being, I and many people in the paddock, a lot of the engineers and a lot of the drivers think they're going to need more tyres, as in an allocation. So they get 2 sets of tyres per all the running during a weekend. Now with the degradation levels on these tyres and the fact that free practice has been extended by 10 minutes each, so that's an extra 20 minutes. So you could end up doing 80 minutes of free practice, 12 minutes of group qualifying, and then 3 more duels if you're to get to pole, and then the whole race. There's a big question mark on if they can do it effectively on 2 sets of tyres, such as the different nature of the compound. So
what do we know about drop off?
I think they wear, and then there is a window, and there is once the heat cycle has gone through, then they start to come back when they're looked after. So there's a lot of management that's going to be needed in some of the races, not all, but some of the races. But the big point, I think, which is worrying, particularly Formula E, and particularly the TV people, Alexa, you're going to be worried about this, is that in free practice, I think you're going to see a lot of dead track action. I think it's going to be one of those cases where a lot of the teams, if not all, for the first 15 minutes or 20 minutes even, which is half of that free practice session, are just not going to bother going out because they want to save their tyres and their allocation. It is under discussion to take more tyres, but for lots of reasons, including sustainability and freight and all of these things, which have to be factored in. It's not defined yet, but I think it could be that if there's a bit of an embarrassing situation, that they could get an extra allocation. Double headers, they get 3 sets. Single races, they get 2 sets. So again, even double headers, it's going to be interesting to see if they can make them last. The other thing, very quickly, there is now a tyre parc ferme, which is squirreled away in the sporting regulations, that teams have to hand their tyres back to the FIA, and they have a special parc ferme. So the teams only get them 45 minutes before they are used. So this is to stop treating them, which we've seen a lot in the past, putting them out in the sun, maybe using some agents or even just giving them a little rub or whatever you want to call it. And now there is going to be a parc ferme. I mean, is this justified, or is this policing gone mad? I don't know. I mean, what next? We're going to get an engineers parc ferme. We're going to see Fabrice Roussel and Stephen Lane being fed through bars at midnight or something before they can come out to work. I don't know. Where does this stop, VW? Where does it stop?
Well, I mean, the other thing that's interesting about that is some of the most negative chat I heard about tyres came from sort of the Jag camp, the Jag-powered camp. But ultimately, I feel like they didn't necessarily have a particularly happy test, Sam.
No, it was a funny one, actually, because obviously they missed the first session because part of their penalty for going over the cost cap. So they lost 3 hours. And then Cassidy had a broken drive shaft, so he lost a chunk of time as well. Mitch did post the fastest overall time of the test, so it's quick enough. But I think it was an out-and-out lap in terms of, an out prep push, go for it, quali sim, whereas others didn't. I'm not sure. I think Jaguar are going to be there or thereabouts. I don't think they've taken a step backwards. They've got a test today, actually, as we speak, out in Mallorca, and Frines is over there as well. So Envision are having a bit of time in addition to Jaguar. I think the order, loosely, so hard to try and put it in order before they've done laps in anger. I think the order is loosely kind of Porsche seem to be there. They seem to have making a step. They seem to have the pace consistently on 300 and 350. So then you say, okay, well, Andretti. And then you think, well, probably then there's a bunch. And I think Nissan have made a big step. So I think Nissan are the next genuine challengers, which would also probably include McLaren. And then you've probably got Jaguar there or thereabouts as well. And then you throw in Vision in there. DS had a pretty good test, and Maserati seemed quick over long runs. I think it's just so close to call. And the real sort of left field one, or the one that's not proven, is Kiro. So you toss them in probably in that lower bracket there, and you've got all bar Mahindra and Lola. I think capable of challenging for victories, which is insane, isn't it? Because it's how many is that? Is that 18 cars or something ridiculous? Probably is, isn't it?
I think you've mentioned 90% of the field there. That was pretty good going.
So I honestly think it's really anybody's, but probably there will be some surprises because of the tyre factor I mentioned, that they're just still trying to find the range with the tyres. And the key thing for me is this year we're going to see the genuine return of the attack mode, because it's really been absent, hasn't it, the last 2 years? It's just something you've got to get out of the way. You couldn't get the traction on those Hancocks. You couldn't surge through as you used to be able to do in Gen 2. That's going to come back this year, because the tyres for that period of what would it be, 2 or 3 laps, probably 8 minutes in total in 2 hits, attack charge is going to make a big difference this season. And you're going to see gambles as well. You're going to see people waiting till later in the race or chancing on a safety car situation. And I think there's going to be a few real surprises in the mix. So when we talk about orders, just caveat all of that with the fact that the attack mode is going to be super important and much more strategically interesting than it has been for the last few years.
Are there any teams you think are going to be set further back perhaps by this test? Because, for example, I'm thinking in my mind of the likes of, we spoke about Jag, but we didn't talk about Envision, where if Jag had problems, Envision had bigger ones. It just felt like they were really struggling to consistently be getting out for laps. And given how things went last year, I don't know if they are going to be a little bit further back, and if there's anyone else we should be concerned about.
Yeah, I think Envision's problem at Harama, they weren't particularly quick and they had lots of issues, but they were like teething, niggly issues. I mean, they had a problem with the steering damper because they hadn't run it before. So, some of the customers are a little bit on the back foot, but that test will have reset them and sort of calibrated them nearer to their manufacturer mothership. So I don't see why Envision shouldn't be back on sort of, let's call it parity with Jaguar like they were in season 9. But yeah, I mean, Mahindra showed flashes of real speed, particularly De Vries did a couple of good times. They seem pretty buoyant. I don't think they're in that kind of big mixer for race wins yet, and I'm not sure they will be, but I envisage them having a much stronger season they've had in the past 2. And then Lola is still learning as well.
Sam, as the unofficial spokesman for Lola, how are they learning?
Well, I think they're quite confident. They had a sort of decent test. I mean, it's their first public showing. I mean, it's actually, without we've been serious, it's actually quite emotional seeing the blue and yellow, and spent some time with Till Bechtelsheimer, the owner, and it was quite something seeing it back in international racing, and it's going to be the same on the grid at Sao Paulo, I'm sure. But they they had a problem in the dummy race. So the dummy race, which was held on the Thursday afternoon, saw Maloney pushed off the grid. He had a problem, which was a sort of electric issue, which triggered the accident data recorder, which sort of flags a crash event and then shuts the battery off. So it was a bit of an anomaly, but he did lose a session because of that. They had to chase it and find it, and they eventually did. Other than that,
I felt so bad for Zayn as well, being the new kid on the block and being the only one stuck on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, it was a shame not to get that data in the can. But other than that, Degrassi had a reasonable run in the race. They aren't, they're not going to be fighting for points in the first races, that's for sure. They're still learning and they still need time. I think they probably need half a season to get onto that sort of, onto the inter-competitive order, let's say. But you never know. I mean, Formula E, you can take a gamble, as I said, on attack mode, and I'm sure they'll be doing some of that, or they'll be saving energy, or they'll gamble on a safety car, and they could get some results, they could get some points, but don't expect it. I think if the races are run clean and fresh, then they're going to be towards the rear, but it's a good place for them to get the data and the requisite knowledge and experience to push on from there.
So the dummy race has been a feature of Formula E pre-season testing since before the championship had even started, although I imagine that it's nowhere near as dramatic as the dummy race that Donington ended up with 2 of the cars written off as they cross the line. But what format did it take? Did they all actually go off from a proper grid? Because sometimes they're just done in sort of time attacks, really.
It wasn't an official start. I mean, they were allowed to use their all-wheel drive off the grid, but they went in twos. So they went in sort of grid formation and off they went. Yes. Did
we learn anything about the style of racing? Or is it too early to say whether with Peloton stuff has gone? Or
no, that's still remaining. And with Harama, with the energy targets, it's going to be the same. So Sao Paulo will run to 38.5 kilowatt hours, the same spec as it did, and the same laps, 31 laps at Sao Paulo. It will the Peloton, the pack racing effect will still be there. I think what you're going to see now, though, is just going back to the attack mode. The attack mode is going to make so much more difference that you're going to get even more overtaking, but more dramatic overtaking, let's say, where people take 3 or 4 cars into a corner or down a straight, because that extra drive and that extra push off the corners is just going to give them the necessary traction to get the moves done. So that will still be in play. So the actual test itself, Scott Elkins did a few safety car and full course yellow things, and then I think he sort of deliberately messed around a bit with the opening of the window, of the attack charge window. I say attack charge; it's now officially pit boost. It's called. So
it's got a name now, has it?
It's got a name, yeah. So hopefully it doesn't change its names as much as ERT.
Was it any more dramatic?
Well, I mean, it was one of the key features of the test to try and evidence that they could get reliability from this hardware. And
Alexa, were you riveted by the sight of a car stationary in the pit lane for 30 seconds?
I think, if I'm going to speak from a TV perspective, I think it's got potential to look really cool on TV. That you're right, when it just pulls in and it is sat there for 30 seconds, you're like, okay. And then actually, when you see everyone taking their pit boost on different laps and the field kind of having to re-intertwine when they're all in these little gaggles and packs, it actually was quite good fun and did really liven things up. So yeah, I was sat in the grandstand opposite the pit lane when all of this was happening. And actually in my mind, I could literally almost visualize these graphics and the sound effects and all the special magic things that I'm sure TV will do to make it look cool on screen. So you're right, when it's sat there in the pit lane in real life, it's a bit slow, but that merge at the end is the same way as a good pit stop in F1. I think it'll be quite the experience.
Well, would be a good time for some tyre changes, maybe.
Well, if they've got any left by that stage, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Alexa's definitely the person to ask, because she's in World Endurance Championship where we have another life, she's always dodging, jacks and air guns and wheels and all sorts going on. So, she's at the forefront. She's at the coal face of those pit stops. I think, I just don't think they'll be able to show them. I mean, they can't show them in their entirety if this does happen. And the latest is...
there's not a director on earth that's going to show a car stationary in a pit lane for 30
there's
seconds.
no point showing the whole thing for 30 seconds. Maybe put it in like a little sub box somewhere, have it going, and then show the rest of the race going on. As long as not everybody pits on the same lap, and that's not possible.
Yeah, and
Oh, someone's Alexa delivery, Amazon delivery is here.
Sorry. It's on brand for me, right?
Yeah, very much so. We'll pause if you want to go and get it.
That's all right. I'm going to pester my flatmate. She'll sort it out.
It's Alexa's own personal attack charge booster for the start of the season to get the energy levels right.
Oh, that's very good. Right, going back to the script. Alexa, you mentioned one of the rookies, Paul Maloney, being left on the grid for the dummy race. There were two other rookies there, David Beckmann. Well, is Taylor Barnard a rookie or not? Obviously, he did a couple of races last season. I guess by the true definition is when you've done a full season.
Well, neither of them.
So did Beckmann, right?
Yeah, Beckmann's not a rookie technically, is he? But I think we should give him a special.
Actually, you're quite right.
Status.
And they're all rookies. How well did they do?
Honestly, all of them impressed in one way or another. That they were all at some point during the weekend high up in the times or consistently with the rest of the pack. I think probably Taylor Barnard caught my eye the most, also just in the way that McLaren as a team are talking about him. They're like, the kid's quick. Like, he's really impressive. So for me, he caught my eyes the most, but David Beckmann, like topping a session with Kiro Race Co., again, not something to be sniffed at.
And now is a good time to listen to Sam, who spoke to Neon McLaren team principal Ian James and Taylor Barnard about that test.
The Race F1 podcast is brought to you by Merrill. It's no secret that finances can get complicated. Like me, I'm sure many of you listening will have financial goals. Perhaps it's even saving up for that trip to a Grand Prix far afield. Whatever your goals are, from starting a business to saving for kids' college to getting more stamps in your passport, you want a straightforward path there. But life tends to have other plans, and things get in your way. Merrill understands that. That's why with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalised plan that can help keep your money in sync with your life. So with the bull at your back, no matter what life brings, you get a clear path forward. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
So Ian James and Taylor Barnard, thank you very much for joining us. We're here at Harama. We weren't expecting to be at Harama, but here we are. I think, first of all, incredible job to be here, Ian. There's going to be a lot that you're going to find out in the coming days, the 3 days of testing here. Quite a abrasive track and a bit of an old school circuit. But first of all, just the job that has been done by Formula E to get this test on at all.
It's been phenomenal. I think that we were all shocked and very saddened by what happened in Valencia and in that wider area, and very, very quickly it became apparent that we were certainly not going to be the priority by any stretch of the imagination. So it was absolutely the right decision very quickly to put a statement out there that test wasn't going to take place as planned, and Formula E have sprung into action to realise this test now in Jarama with only 1 day's delay. So all teams here, all suppliers here, all personnel, and walking in this morning, to be honest with you, you wouldn't have known that this hadn't been in the planning for months, to be honest. It's really impressive. So hats off to all of the men and women that have been involved in this, and just very, very impressive.
So big change for this year in the sense that Taylor Barnard, who's joined us as well, is going to be in the car opposite Sam Bird. Obviously, you know Taylor well from the last year, really, of working with him. Tell us about this decision to bring Taylor on board. I mean, was it much of a decision at all, really, Ian?
I can't really give you the honest answer because he's sitting to my left, so it's a difficult one to say. No, listen, Taylor has impressed throughout, and the fact that we offered him the position that we did as a reserve and development driver was testament to not only his skill as a racing driver, but also the way that he works with the team. I've said time and again that for me to be successful within Formula E, you don't just need drivers who are quick, you need drivers who are part of that whole development process that can offer that feedback, but also have the character that fits within the team as well. And from day one, it was clear that Taylor had that. At the same time, he's an incredibly exciting talent. He's got a long and very bright future ahead of him. So it's a great opportunity for us to be really at the starting point of that future. And then as we progressed through last year, and there was an opportunity that started to develop to bring him into the team in that race seat, it was a very straightforward decision for us. Now, that's not to say that it's not without risk, and I say that with again the knowledge of him sitting to my left now, because he hasn't had a huge amount of experience within Formula E. We know how different Formula E can be to other forms of motorsport, but the job he did in Monaco, the 2 races in Berlin were outstanding, and I think that what we're going to see going into this season is somebody that, together with Sam, is really going to give us the ingredients that we need from a driver perspective to make that step forward that we need to take.
Taylor, some nice words there from the boss. I think the 2 predominant times I spoke to you last season was after Monaco and Berlin. Frankly, you look like you've been in a washing machine after Monaco, that you've been swirled around the midfield and you managed to get it home. And I don't think there was a mark on your car, which was incredible. And then in Berlin, you broadly did the same, but you got more involved and you got some points as a reward. Looking now as a full-time driver in Formula E with Neon McLaren Formula E team, what are your thoughts ahead of the season? You've had a bit more preparation now. You've had more than half an hour compared to Monaco. Yeah. How are you feeling about the coming season? What sort of preparation levels have you had, and where do you think you'll be when you come to Friday, Saturday of Sao Paulo?
Yeah, of course. Like you said, preparation has been a lot better than what I had before. Like Ian said, I think joining this team as a race driver with Sam next to me has been something very valuable. I can learn off Sam. There's a lot to learn off Sam as well. So I'm definitely not blind to the fact that I need to learn quite a lot. I'm coming into this not brand new, but still very fresh. So there's a lot of things that I need to learn, but I'm feeling quite comfortable at the minute and definitely ready to get going. Where I'm going to end up in Sao Paulo and things like that is hard to say at the moment, but I'm feeling ready.
The notable difference, of course, is the all-wheel drive that we're going to have for this season. There's a whole package, in fact. I mean, the tyres are going to be extremely interesting to see how they go a bit softer this year. What's your feeling about those 2 key factors? I mean, is it going to be something that you think you'll be able to exploit and get good results immediately?
Obviously, it's a big change from previous car. The tyres, I think during the race is going to offer a little bit of I think it's going to dig. I think there's going to be some degradation. So over a track perhaps where it's a little bit more rough, it's going to add another variable for us to try and work through. I think I'll be able to manage that okay. So from the performance perspective, should be okay. 4-wheel drive is something that I've not had before, but something that didn't really surprise me. Like, I kind of got used to it pretty quickly. From a driver's perspective, it's quite easy to try to manipulate lap time out of that. Because the traction is so good with 4-wheel drive, you can kind of, even if you've got a bit of a balance problem, you can kind of drive around it and exploit the fact that you've got so much traction. So that's not really the main thing to focus on for me at the moment. It would definitely be the tyres.
Thanks, Teddy. Just moving back over to Ian. Where are the Neon McLaren team at this season? I mean, you've had 2 seasons where you've had spikes of really strong form, and you've won a race and you got podiums and poles, but consistency hasn't been, I'm sure, what you wanted. How have you addressed that, and what changes is there within the team, just about the philosophy of running it and trying to get more consistent results?
I think it's fair to say, and said on many occasions now, we haven't met our expectations or our aspirations for the past 2 seasons. And as a team, we want to be fighting consistently, as you say, for those podiums and those race wins, and that's the position that we need to put ourselves in. I think there are a number of factors that we knew that we needed to work on. Obviously, we've spoken about Taylor joining the team, which I've got high expectations for. We've got now the opportunity to hit the reset button with the package. So been working very, very closely together with Nissan on the development of that package in preparation for the second half of Gen 3. It's such a cliche to say we don't know where we're going to be until we actually start the testing, but that's the genuine truth. I think if we use the past 2 years as a benchmark, we're confident that we've taken a reasonable step forward. The next 3 days are going to be crucial to really understanding where we stand against the competition as well. From a team perspective, I don't think that anything was particularly wrong or broken or needed real a fundamental change. It was more about ensuring that we kept our heads down, that we made sure that we had the right approach and work ethic that we've always had in the past, that we play to our strengths, and that we start this season operationally as fit as we possibly can do. And I'm confident that we're in that position. So if we've got the complete package from a performance perspective with the drivers, with the car itself, then it's going to come down to that operational excellence, as we've mentioned in the past, and how we execute. And as long as we can go in and execute, minimise any risks, minimise any errors that are there, then we should put ourselves in a strong position.
Part of that operational excellence and striving to get a slick operation that can bring more consistency is going to include managing potentially the attack charge pit stops. The first pit stops coming back to Formula E since 2018. They're going to be very different to what they were in the past. But first of all, confidence levels, Ian. Obviously, we're talking before the testing starts here in Jarama, but there seems to have been some genuine progress made in this equipment and the hardware to evidence it and to get it bulletproof in the sense of reliability.
I think as an ecosystem between the teams and manufacturers, the FIA and FEO, we've been very clear that if we do introduce something like this, it needs to be done in a way that we've got the robustness and maturity of the systems that we're going to be using to ensure that any kind of reliability issues or gremlins don't adversely impact the results of the races. First and foremost, that's absolutely key. As you say, a huge amount of work has gone into this through the last few months by all parties to try and make sure that we're in that position. We've had the results of the teams testing through now. I know that the suppliers are working hard on ensuring that we can iron out any of the last few gremlins. So Thursday is going to be absolutely crucial to get that race simulation in there, really tested in anger and see where we come out of that. I think with anything like this, Formula E has been super innovative as a series, and as racers, especially as those at the sharp end of the competition, you're always going to be reluctant to introduce something which is yet another variable. I don't think that should put us in a position where we shouldn't introduce or shouldn't be scared to introduce something. We just need to make sure it's done in the right way. And I think, as I say, this final test is going to be crucial to that. And let's see where it goes from there.
Well, Taylor, you drivers don't usually need an energy boost, but you're going to get one, or the car's going to get one. Tell us about your experience so far, because actually from the outside, it doesn't look too involved for the driver. You come in, you stop, you put it in neutral, and then you wait for 30 seconds. It doesn't seem like the most dynamic experience for a driver.
I think as a driver it's a pretty simple experience. Obviously we've tested that quite thoroughly already. For a driver's point of view, that the procedure is correct and we know what to do. But like you said, it's pretty simple, not too difficult. And obviously having done pit stops in F2, it's not something which is completely new to me. So yeah, I think I've got that under control.
And we're anticipating that potentially one strategy that Formula E will employ is to have these at double headers. And the first double header is at your home race at Jeddah. If that comes to pass, from a strategy point of view, how do you see it panning out? Because Formula E races are quite complex affairs anyway, and then you've got the added strategic challenge of the attack charge pit stop. I mean, that's going to be an area that potentially, as a rookie, you might be able to exploit and get some really strong results initially.
Absolutely. Honestly, strategic wise, I don't know how that's going to plan out. For sure, it's going to juggle things up a lot. Honestly, how it's going to work, not too sure. But with the D rate that we're experiencing so far, I think it's going to change quite a lot. That you'll be able to push on your in lap or push on your out lap. It's going to be very difficult. And I think as a rookie, I just need to make sure that myself, I've got everything under control. I understand what I need to do to get the best performance out of it. But the strategy-wise, I'll leave that down to the team because I'm not too sure at the moment.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it, Ian? We're going to see these pit stops happening. I mean, on the face of it, again, from a dynamic point of view, it's going to be challenging for the TV and for people to understand what it is. And it's the TV commentator's job to describe what's going on there. But what are you hearing from the FIA and the promoters about the showbiz element? Do you think it needs it for those images of the car stopped for so long?
I'm no expert in terms of how the broadcast is going to be edited and what camera angles we're going to see and so on and so forth. My gut feel is there's going to be very little focus on a car sitting there being charged. The fact that they are going to be charged, the fact that they're going to come out then in a different position on the racetrack will add, again, a new strategic element to the race. So I'd expect that the broadcast is going to be focused on the race and the outcome from that and how that all then plays into the overall strategy rather than watching a car actually being charged in the pit lane. And I think that's sufficient. I think the challenge we've got, and actually from a broadcast perspective, maybe the more interesting thing would be to look at the team principal's face when they need to decide which driver's coming in first and which driver's coming in second. I think that's going to be the real interesting thing to watch.
We see enough of your faces, Ian. We don't need to see.
I'm just plugging myself there, indeed. But yeah, this is what we need to do on during the course of this week, is to really understand what the implications are of doing it in this way. We know, if it was one car that was coming in being charged and then going out per team, that's super easy to manage and predict and so on and so forth. The fact that you've got two there, the timing in between the two cars coming in, how that's all going to play out, I don't think we actually know how that's going to work at the moment. You can go through the simulations, but until you actually really try it in anger, that's the first point at which you know how it's going to look. And it's going to be fascinating to go through that this week. And then, as you say, let's see whether we're using it in anger in the race situation in Jeddah.
Well, a lot to digest, a lot to look forward to for season 11 of Formula E. Final question: What would a good season? What's not the prediction, but what's the hope? What are you focused on, the objectives for this season? When we come to London at the end of July, what would a good season look for Neil McLaren?
Aside from a championship win, I mean, let's be honest about it. That's what we're...
Well, you've done it before. So.
We've done it a couple of times before, but it's... McLaren exists to go racing. It's as simple as that. And racing at its very heart is about competition, and it's about winning. And as much fun as it is in this paddock, to be in amongst some great people, some great engineers, some great teams, ultimately we just want to win. So that's going to be very much the focus. But we're going to have to take it one race at a time. Again, sounds very cliched, but that's the approach we're going to have. So I'm not looking at the moment about where we're going to end up, or predicting where we're going to end up at the end of the season. We're going to be taking it session by session, and that's the key thing for me as well. One of the things in Formula E is that you need to be on point in each and every session. And I think with the new cars that we've got this year, the updates with the Gen 3 Evo, the new powertrains that everybody's had a reset on, it's those that come out in FP1, FP2 cleanly convert that into a good qualifying performance, then execute well in the race, those are the ones that are going to be prevailing. So that operational excellence, that focus on executing in the right way is very much what we're looking at.
And Taylor, yourself, what would you like to achieve this season? I mean, it's you've only done 3 races. I mean, I think it's... we talked about previous rookies. I mean, Johan de Ruvela and Sasha Fenestraz, and they managed to achieve some reasonable results and the odd pole and the odd podium, but neither of them are in the championship at the moment. There is an argument to say that actually consistency and gaining experience in the first half of the championship is what you can build on and get a really good platform for a second half of the season. Is that kind of how you're looking at it?
Yeah, like Ian said, I think it's more a fact of just taking it session by session, race by race. Of course, I mentioned before that Sam's already got a wealth of experience, and that's something that I need to learn from him. Trying to give you a good answer as to what kind of results I'm looking for, I definitely want to score points from the beginning on, that's quite clear. But later down the line, a podium and a win is definitely what I want to achieve personally. But first, I have to take it race by race and just try to learn as much as possible at the beginning.
Well, good luck. I hope it goes well for you this season. Thanks for joining us on the Race Formula E podcast, guys.
Thank you.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer. Registered investment advisor. Member SIPC.
The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, onabotulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer. Registered investment advisor. Member SIPC.
Right, well, there was another test that went on alongside or just after the pre-season test, and that was the first ever all-woman Formula E test. Basically, a who's who of all high-quality, top-level female racing drivers that are out there, Alexa. A first of its kind, certainly in Formula E, but really across the board. And it's had lots and lots of favourable coverage, rightly so. What did you make of it all?
There's a lot to look into with it, to be honest. Firstly, the fact it happened is fantastic. It was not only a great opportunity to try out some new drivers in the championship, give the drivers themselves the opportunity to try this top level machinery. But again, at the end of the day, ultimately, it's another test session. So it was in the team's interest to choose and work with a driver to try and get more data and more information out of these cars, which are, to many of them, like the likes of Kiro, really still quite relatively new. So from my perspective, it was a really, really cool initiative. It was great to see the drivers being given such a platform as well. And honestly, every single one of them was a real credit to themselves, that they showed up, they knew about the championship, they spoke really positively about it, and they were all just excited to be there. And the times for many of them were really quite impressive, given the lack of experience the lack of sim time. I think, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, none of them got to do Harama in the sim. They'd all done their sim prep on Valencia, so we're coming in with no experience in these cars and essentially blind to what they were about to experience. So yeah, the times are very impressive.
Yeah, I think they were, 3.5 seconds. If you said 3.5 seconds in normal circumstances, you go, that's a big chunk. But in the context of what Alexa's just said in terms of the preparation and the fact this is a brand new car, the regular drivers, the race drivers were complaining quite a lot about the heaviness of the steering with the new soft tyre. So it was difficult circumstances, but I thought they, that most of them did pretty well. From what I hear, and I've spoke to several of the drivers, obviously Abbi Pulling did the quickest time and impressed Nissan to a great extent, and I think she's got a genuine chance of getting on the Berlin rookie test entry list, along with Chadwick, who's already confirmed with Jaguar TCS Racing. And a couple of other standout performances. I thought Ella Lloyd was really good for Neon McLaren. She was 7th quickest, and she's got, you look at her experience, she's the least experienced driver there on the grid. She's only driven Formula 4, and she's had, I think, one F1 Academy race. I thought she did very well. She really impressed Gary Paffett, who I spoke to, and, you don't get higher praise than that. Miki Koyama, who drove for Lola, she was 4th and did a good job, chaperoned by Kazuki Nakajima, who I had a good chat to in the paddock, and she's highly rated by Toyota Gazoo Racing, and obviously Yamaha and Toyota have very close links. There is a commercial relationship between the two of them, so that was quite interesting to see her there. It's, I think on merit, it was a really good entry list, and I thought there was some good performances. I'm not going to name names, but there was a couple of drivers there that didn't impress the teams just through their
I'm sure we can look at the times and
aptitude. They didn't really ingratiate themselves with the team. They didn't seem to take an interest. They sort of just wanted to do the media thing, which I think is a bit disappointing. But you're going to get that in a 22 driver field wherever you go, whether they're men or women. I mean, that's just how people are. People conduct themselves differently. But on the whole, very positive. I think the big question now is, what next? Is this good?
Well, that was going to be my question for Alexa, because it's all very well. This
Alexa,
one test,
Alexa will answer that comprehensively.
This one test taking place.
Great,
but
cheers, guys.
Well, it's got to be a means to an end, hasn't it? Otherwise, what's the point? So we know Formula E purchased the assets of what was W Series. Are we going to have an all-female support series or feeder series? What's happening?
Hey, I certainly can't speak on that side of things, but I think what I hope and expect to see going forward is drivers that impressed and put the time and effort into getting to know the teams, getting to know Formula E, hopefully being given further opportunities in the future. That I think some people have perhaps come into this with the wrong expectation that these drivers will do the test and then within a year be planted in a race seat. But as you mentioned, Sam, so many of these drivers are ultimately F1 Academy level, still doing F3, F4. You wouldn't expect any other F3 or F4 driver to be taken, do one test and then planted into a race seat. But I think this development opportunity that has been created for these drivers, like you mentioned with the rookie test, and suddenly if you put them in a sim support role where they can gain the experience and actually become someone who's quite knowledgeable in Formula E, in the years to come, once they've gained further single-seater and perhaps even further race experience, they suddenly become quite an enticing prospect because they know the championship better than many other drivers who've not taken the interest over the years. And I think that's, for me, what I want to see happen. I don't expect this to be a means to an end and solve the lack of women currently competing in Formula E within a year. But give it 3, 4, 5. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we saw a few of these younger names in particular. I'm looking at Abbi Pulling or Ella Lloyd suddenly.
Yes. Abby's the one, surely, right? She's having an absolutely breakout season, which has to lead to some high-profile move, you would think, wouldn't you?
I think eventually, yes. But again, she still needs to get that race experience. And I think she'll be likely doing GB3 next year as a result of winning F1 Academy. You go and do that, maybe take a seat in F3, F2, get the experience there, prove yourself amongst those single-seater drivers, whilst also continuing to work with a Formula E team, getting to know the championship. Suddenly, we're looking at the F2 graduates that we've taken on this year in the likes of Taylor Barnard and Zayla Maloney. Then why not consider Abby for a seat? Why shouldn't that be on the cards?
Yeah, I think that 3-year time frame is about right, isn't it? Sam, 3 to 5, that seems realistic?
Yeah, I think so. And that would tie in with a potential support series, which I know has been discussed at Formula E. I spoke to Jeff Dodds at Harama at length about this, and yeah, they have, as you said, they've got some copyrights and some IP from the liquidation of the W series, and they've not bought that for just to put it in an attic for 10 years. They want to use that, but obviously it's got to make commercial sense, and they've got to get some backers to make it happen. But I'd love to see these Gen 3 cars, been raced in 2026 to 2030 as a support series with Formula E, and I think it would cultivate that real ladder of talent that could feed some really good women into Formula E. And I think actually there are some, people talk about the steering and they talk about this and that. I actually think there are some real key attributes of Formula E that will suit some of those really good drivers that were tested at the weekend. And I mentioned Ella Lloyd. She's come in, she's driving a really powerful, gnarly single seater. A year on from driving anything, and she's finishing in the top 10 of those drivers. So I think that's a great story. The one story which was really disappointing was Lulu Wadu, a driver that both Alexa and I know very well from sports car racing, and she didn't get one lap at the test because of seat fitting issues, which just sort of confounded me. I mean, God knows what it was like for her. It must have been really frustrating not to get in there, but she couldn't get. She's very small. I think she's 5'2", and she just couldn't get comfortable or properly viewed, I think, from the cockpit. And it was just such a shame she couldn't get out, because she was one of the drivers that I was really going to feature upon for that test, because I think she's really good. And she was the only driver, wasn't she, that came from the sports car or endurance world, which is a bit disappointing as well. I was hoping Michelle Gatting could be there, or maybe even Dorian Pan could have made an appearance. But Lulu came all the way from Japan, and she's racing in Super GT at the moment and didn't even get a lap. So hopefully that's rectified by Jaguar soon.
Yeah, I spoke to James Barkley before all of this happened, and Jag's interest in they've already made it very, very clear that they see a long-term relationship with Jamie in terms of having her in the rookie test going forward. But with Lilu as well, she's the first ever woman to win a race in the FIA World Endurance Championship. Like, there is some serious credit to her name. And I think, if nothing else, Jag will be disappointed to have not had her go out and actually have that extra testing that she could have done for them. And yeah, the poor girl, I saw her in the car on the day and she just couldn't see over the top of the car. I don't know what happened. Things like this do happen.
That's quite a fundamental problem, right?
Little bit, yeah. Little bit of an issue. But actually, the whole paddock really pitched in trying to help her. I know Da Costa offered up his seat insert to try and see if that would fix the situation. That she wasn't significantly smaller than the other female drivers, so I'm sort of vaguely intrigued as to what went wrong there. But I think Jag will be true to their word and will find a way to give her another opportunity, because if nothing else, that will be quite an interesting benchmark for the likes of Jamie Chadwick to have, and Jag to almost, I don't want to say pit them against each other, because that's not what we should be doing, but to get an idea of what kind of level they're both at would be, yeah, something very useful for them.
She'd have been top six. She'd have got a top six time for sure. Confident that. I
don't disagree.
I think she's really good, and hopefully we see her, if not Berlin, then at least she gets a manufacturer test day in. And
it's been pleasantly encouraging by how well it's been received in the wider press. I think it's probably got significantly more traction than the main test itself. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it should do. The worst thing about these things, and you and I remember at Diriyah in 2018, the hand of Alejandro Agag had on the test there, which was this kind of novelty thing of women driving in Saudi Arabia. And it was kind of
in Saudi Arabia, yeah. Well, it was. It
didn't look or feel good when we were doing it, and frankly, when you've got the likes of Carmen Jorda there doing 2 laps and then claiming to have set the fastest time, then probably tells you all you need to know about some aspects of.
I like that from my memory.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, looking more positively, yes, this is exactly the sort of thing that should be getting Formula E out there a bit more and showing that not only the diversity and the just giving young women a chance to show what they can do. I think beyond that, just building something credible and something where we don't even, when you're at a circuit, we shouldn't even be we shouldn't even be noticing these things, really, should we? It should just be part of the fabric of racing. And it is
well, the driver's handbook has been made gender neutral for the first time. Some might argue 70 years too late, but you know.
Well, there you go. I mean,
better late than never.
Honestly, we're coming from endurance racing and remembering drivers like Claudia Hürtgen and Ellen Lohr and many others as well. And now you've got this great crop from the Iron Dames, and you know they're winning races, and they're factors in championships, and they're always there at the front. And it's like, well, you know, why should you be surprised? You know, if you get an equal opportunity and you get a culture of women able to get the same chances as men, then you know you are going to get the best rising to the top and showing what they can do. And yeah, let's just hope it happens in single seaters, and they can, you know, on merit they can be there and get the job done, and then people don't actually have to distinguish between the sexes as much as they do at the moment.
And actually also worth mentioning that I think some of the teams, but also more widely through the championship, there were young women karters were invited to see the test as well. And I think that's also something that is it makes me so happy that they've done that. That we've often spoken about the fact that sometimes for younger drivers, some of them really dismiss Formula E as an end goal. And if you have a younger generation of karters going up in a few years' time into these F4, F3 seats and seeing Formula E as an end destination that they want to aim towards, that's only going to increase further participation in the championship. And I think just building up this group of women that are interested in taking part and want to be there is going to be so important. And I think we will feel and see the difference in the years to come.
Right, well, we've got a little bit of any other business. I think we've successfully covered off that Beckmann will have been announced at Kiro by the time this podcast goes out. Sam, Lola news, they actually own the entry now. So there's no longer Abt.
Yeah, this surprised quite a few people, actually. Till Bechtolsheimer, the owner of Lola, has bought the licence from Abt, and they now own it. I mean, Till was initially going to come in as owning the 12th licence. He was in discussions with Formula E about acquiring that up until about the end of last year, around Christmas time, I think, and then it went away, and then they came in as a manufacturer, registered manufacturer. Now they own the team. So yeah, that's I think that's actually a really good news story, and they and Abt seem to be coexisting and working together extremely well. They've got the Yamaha angle as well. It just feels like a nice settled package. There's a lot of work to do on every level, sportingly and commercially and so on, but considering that Lola was essentially a defunct manufacturer 3 years ago, I think it's a really rapid ascent, and yeah, you know, you're not going to find me complaining. So
no, I'm not expecting it on this show.
So that's great, and it's actually going to be fun to watch where Lola go after, you know, they've bedded in with these 2 seasons and what it looks like in Gen 4, because they're committed to Gen 4 as well. And actually, just an offshoot of that, it may well be known by the time you're listening to this, dear listener, about the future of the Stellantis brands DS and Maserati for Gen 4, which begins at the end of 26, and also Mahindra, which is quite a complex story. I think we need to keep neutral on it here on this podcast, because it's sort of news coming in all the time about what
we saving it happening for the season preview.
I think we should. Let's save it for the season preview. We can dig deep into it there. But yeah, I mean, good news for UK fans as well is the fact that it looks like the London Excel Arena is going to be the deal to host that race. The season finale is going to be extended to 2026. The initial deal ends next summer, 25.
Are you pleased with that, Alexa? Do you like Excel? Do you think it's a good event?
Absolutely delighted with that one, to be honest. I think the Excel is possibly one of my favourite events, just if nothing else for the novelty of it, that when you're trying to sell Formula E to non-fans, the excitement of being able to race indoors, outdoors, quite literally in the city centre, a matter of metres away from a tube line, is it's unique and something that only Formula E can do. So the longer we can keep doing it there, and the longer these cars are still capable of racing there, then so be it. Why would we go anywhere else?
Couldn't agree more. Yep, I don't want to see Formula E at Silverstone. No way.
No one does. Plus, it means that we can go down the Fox and have some more pints after the action of the day, like we always
Happy
do.
Day.
What? Us? We would never. We would never.
So
Sam,
that's
what's
good
Fatama,
news.
and why should the listeners care about that?
Well, I'll answer the first one and then they can decide for themselves. Fatama is the Formula E Teams and Manufacturers Association, which, it was called
Feta when it first came out, and given there was a team called Edams in the championship at the time, it was all just a bit too cheesy, wasn't it?
It was, but it's always nice to see. We're going to Sao Paulo, so we might see Emmental Fittipaldi, might we?
Hey.
Yeah, okay. I'm
Let's leave
wasted
that
here.
there, please.
Me.
I'm wasted here. So Fatama, yes. So the chairperson of Fatama changes every 2 years, and it's usually a team principal from one of the founding members. So it's all the teams and all the manufacturers get together for the look at the topics of the day and what can be improved and all kinds of different things, from sporting, technical, commercial, governance of the sport and so forth. And the reason why we're talking about it now is that the chairmanship has passed on from Ian James of Neon McLaren to Roger Griffiths of Andretti, and it's Roger's second term.
I was going to say, I'm sure Roger had done it before.
Yeah, he had. He's back. I made a couple of Trump jokes to him, saying a second term, but they didn't go down too well with an American team, I don't think. But let's leave politics aside.
And we're not going there.
No, we don't need to, do we? And Roger's going to take up the chairmanship at, he did do at Harama, and they had his first meeting under his chair. And there's a new secretariat as well, which is someone we have known for many years, Frederic Espinos, who is currently the sporting manager of the APT branch of the Lola Yamaha.
He will do very
APT
well
team.
at that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so. And, Fred's got a lot of experience. Started out as a humble journo like us, VW. Look how some people grow into their careers. And I'm just stuck here talking about Formula E.
I'm not making any comment on that.
So that's quite interesting. I had a good chat with Roger about it, and you'll be able to read about it on the-race.com before Sao Paulo about what's in his in tray, what's hot topics, what we can expect news wise on that one in the coming months and years. And it's a crucial one because obviously it's going to metamorphose from Gen 3.5 into Gen 4 pretty rapidly. Cars are going to be doing their first test.
Arguably, probably the most important transition in Formula E's history.
Well, we said this about Gen 2 to Gen 3, didn't we? And they frankly it was a screw up, wasn't it? I mean, for many months. I mean, it was a mess. So yes, it is crucial, and they can't afford to have those issues that they had, which were overcome, most of them. But still, it needs to be ironed out, and it's not Roger's job to do that. It's the FIA and Formula E's job to do that, but the teams and the manufacturers do play their part, of course. So it'll be interesting to follow that one. And we talked a bit about Pit Boost, just to add that there is a special session in Sao Paulo on the Friday afternoon, which is dedicated solely to the Pit Boost and to try and get more successful boostings done ahead of a possible first ever race at Jeddah in February. But that's still yet to be decided, and it won't be until they're completely sure that there's a bulletproof reliability with these boosting infrastructures.
Well, hopefully they can just get it done so we don't have to go over it in detail in this podcast again, because frankly I find it unbelievably tedious. Alexa, you won't be joining us, sadly, for our pre-season preview that's coming up. We do have a couple of very special guests for that. Well, although you're very welcome if you're around. But given that you're not there, quick pre-season prediction. Championship team, championship winner.
Oh, you put me on the spot here. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, this makes a wonderful change from Alexa asking me every bloody WEC race who I think is going to win. Although my strike rate was very impressive this year, Alexa, wasn't it?
Mine was absolutely horrendous with Formula E last season, to the point that we actually started doing like reverse psychology, that every time I predicted somebody to win, they would have an absolute shocker, to the point that when we were in Portland, I predicted Nick Cassidy to win because I wanted the championship fight to go down to London, and we know
I see what you did there.
How that sort of ended up going. So, no, if we're going with a fresh slate, I'm going to go perhaps a little, I don't think we can call it rogue anymore. Drivers' Championship, I'm saying Oliver Rowland. And Teams' Championship, I'm going to stick with Porsche.
Well, we'll clip that up and play that back to you at the end of the season. So thank you for committing that to audio.
Thank you.
And yes, as I say, we'll be back with a pre-season special. I think Formula E starts on the same day that F1 finishes. Is that right? Unbelievable. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Tis.
Well, weekend. Thank you very much. You can read all of Sam's witterings on the-race.com. And yeah, thanks for listening. Goodbye.
The Athletic.